So I'm going to give you an intro. Agnes has spoken at our events before. She's awesome. She is all things sales. So I'm really excited, again, to sit through your presentation. Described as an influential and inspirational by her clients and peers, Agnes Land helps organizations grow through change. She has a knack for breaking down complex strategies into tangible business tactics, leading the way in sales transformation for SMBs and enterprises alike. Agnes has considerable experience on the assessment strategy, design, and implementation of business transformations in various industries with a focus on sales, customer-focused business strategies, organization design, sales efficiency, and transformation. Agnes has consulted for clients in broadcast and media, advertising and marketing, distribution and warehousing, education and manufacturing, professional services, and construction. So you've experienced every industry out there, Agnes.
Just a little bit. It's a
Awesome.
few.
Well,
I don't want to date myself.
well, thank you again so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And I'll pass it over to you, and I'll be back towards the end to help with any questions that you might have.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. The way Hopin set up, the way tech work, I actually can't see any comments until the end. So I'm going to go through my slides as you see them, type them out, and then we can have a fruitful and interactive conversation at the end, okay? So let me go through some of the content that I have for you guys today. And about me, like Rachel says, I'm all things sales. So I actually started as an engineer to start, and I really, really got into the idea of sales and how scientific sales can be, instead of, everyone just saying how, you just need to be charming and you just need to talk to people and be an extrovert. As a matter of fact, I'm not even an extrovert. So I am your typical engineer, introverted, and I just fell in love with the scientific side of sales, which then got me really into the idea of sales consulting, and ultimately moving from sales consulting to sales, being my full-time job. So happy to be here today. If you have any question about sales and or want to just yap about sales all day, feel free to look me up and add me on LinkedIn. That's my favorite social media platform, and then we can take the conversation from there if you ping me your questions on LinkedIn. So in terms of today's convo, though, I'll talk a lot about the W5H of remote selling. Today's conversation is about remote selling and how we can do better in the remote world of where we are. And it's really odd because I put together this deck, I would say, maybe a few months ago, when we're deep into the second lockdown. And when we're trying to come out of it in the springtime, I looked at a lot of information that I, share with the previous group, and it's actually still relevant. As a matter of fact, more relevant than ever, because I'm not even looking at the transformational part of remote selling as a as a byproduct of the COVID anymore. It's more like I'm looking at remote selling as a new way of working moving forward. So today we'll talk a little bit about the W5H of remote selling, and hopefully I'll address your question at the end. Let's start with why, right? I'm a huge believer that you can have the best system, best process, best technology. If there's no reason why you do something, then the adoption is going to be low. So when we look at the new way of working, why are we doing that, and why are we doing it? Like, what is remote selling? How does that work? And when you look at, obviously, the big trigger point here is the fact that we're in pandemic. We're not doing business the way we used to. We're not seeing people face to face like we used to. I mean, we have a huge clientele in the construction industry, and if you can imagine, right, before COVID, and even into into the pandemic now, that industry is very face to face based, right? They can't conduct business not in the office. They cannot conduct business remotely. It's just not how that industry operate. And even in that industry, we have to slowly admit to the fact that, you know what, video conferencing is going to be the way to go, not just for now, but into the future. And how are we going to not, you know, embrace? I want to embrace the change as an efficiency and gravitate toward how we can do things better moving forward, not only as a result of COVID. But when you look at it, the limitation of masks, right? It's funny enough because my son is in French immersion, and what he really have gravitated toward as he pick up the language is lip movement. He's reading the lips, and as people are wearing masks, he's like, well, I'm not really sure what they're saying. So especially when you're picking a second or third language, right? So the limitation of mass, not only for the kids, right, or second language or third language, but even amongst us, right, as we communicate, how mass actually gets in the way of communication. Video chat, I love it. I love it for efficiency. Before, when I used to drive from client to client to client to meetings, I'll be on the road easily 3 hours a day. And now I'm taking more meetings. I'm more efficient because I'm just jumping from one Zoom call to another Zoom call, but that still presents its communication problems, right? You aren't able to build a relationship, I still think, I'm old school, as effectively through just video conferencing or just video chats. And nothing replaced those water cooler conversations, right? And the idea of social distancing, right? I see, some organization really creative and have, their strategic session outside, and or have barbecue outside to still keep the culture going. But sure, social distancing is really getting in the way of us communicating with internally and externally as well. So let's move on to the who's, right? Who are we talking to? And I want to ask you, as we talk about who, and as we talk about, when I refer to the word client, who are you thinking about? Is it a client? Is it a decision maker in your client's organization? Is it a decision influencer in that organization? Is it a collaborator? Is it a product partner? Is it a channel partner? So exactly when I talk about remote selling, I want you to understand, and even as I refer to client, it may not be as someone that you're selling to, but it's a person that you're having a relationship with and a stakeholder in your overall buying journey, or your customer's buying journey, I should say. So far, so good. Gonna move on. In terms of what we're communicating with client during COVID, and this one I pulled up some research from McKinsey and Co. So during COVID time, and even into now, I mean, third, or whether you call this a third wave or the fourth wave, I think um, um, the underlying thing that we have to understand is there is there's got to be empathy in every conversation. And I'm not saying, to sing kumbaya in every sales call, but I think you have to be more cognizant of other people's personal situation and personal space, like especially if that's your clients. So whether that your client have kids at home and being empathetic to them, having the kids being online at home, online learning, and the fact that perhaps you have these kids running in the background and asking their parents for a snack, and or whatever the family situation. It could be, some of my workmates, they live alone. They live in one of those, they live downtown, full walls, work, and then their bedroom, and then they can't even go downstairs to, eat all that much anymore, go to the restaurants anymore. So, that in itself takes a toll on someone's energy and spirit. So, understanding everyone, especially in today's world, comes with different responsibility and with that empathy as you talk to your customer. So, McKinsey and Co did a study earlier, I think January 2021, where these are the seven areas of where you can demonstrate empathy to your customer. Number one, obviously, is individual safety, right? You can't you can't just walk into someone's office even if it's open. It's just you just have to respect the individual safety aspect of relationship now. Of course, the idea of security and stability from that standpoint, of personal well-being of stability. I mean, the idea of maybe financial situation of your customer and or the emotional feeling of someone being trapped at home, right? Next, of course, is the idea of convenience and ease of use, right? Switching some buying channel. I've had a lot of client where they would not have had an e-commerce site before. Now, by now, 7 months later, they've already built out their e-commerce site. Not saying that that's going to be a major channel, but for people that need to self-serve and want to self-serve, there is an option there to not have to call a sales rep to buy tools, for example. And last but not least, what I spoke to before in terms of the emotional bond and feeling of trust, the caring for the community. And I mean, like, not pretend you care, but genuinely caring about the community and those around you, right? I can tell you, and I mentioned earlier, I'm a full-time sales rep. So as some of our clients struggle to get in front of, of their client, one of the things I always talk to them about is how genuine are you in your outreach? How much of your outreach is just about asking someone how they're doing, right? Someone that you've done business with for 15 years. Hey, no harm reaching out and see how they're doing and not sell them every time you reach out, right? These, you gotta now understand everyone is in a tougher situation. And by being genuine, you're building that rapport not only for today, but for tomorrow. And I can tell you my hit rate since COVID have actually been higher because, and to be fair, I do have a really good relationship with my buying community, and that's all because it's very reciprocal. Like, I not only want to sell them my product, I genuinely want to know how I can help, right? And whether that is linking them with a lawyer during this time, linking them up with an HR expert during this time, linking them up to a bank during this time, right? How is it that you can help that allows them to feel comfortable and trust you, right? In that building of rapport in a salesperson, in a sales relationship. And of course, like I mentioned, one of the things, the common theme around here is, when you're forging that lasting relationship and with the customer, what you're really saying is, well, how can I help you? What value am I providing here? Why is it that the client is better with me than without me? I ask that of me and my team every day. Why is the client better with you than without you? And if you can't answer that, there is something wrong. We're not selling widgets, right? We're selling the fact that we can help. It doesn't matter whether we sell sales consulting, right? But people come to me with HR questions all the time, or people come to me with succession planning all the time, or, how do I sell my business? How do I get myself ready to sell my business? That's important because if they only come to you when, let's say, Agnes, I need sales training, or my people need sales training. Let's put a 12-week plan together for this year. Is part of our strategic plan that we need to train our people. Then it's very transactional. You're not helping them anticipate the fact that maybe the technology stack is not sufficient for today's remote selling world, right? So you can't even poach the conversation if you don't understand what your customer is going through. And you can't understand what the customer is going through if the customer is reaching out to you, telling you they want something from you, because there's gotta be more to give. So when we talk about this, what we call the sixth principle of value-based selling, we think about that is constantly putting your customer, at the center of everything. Number one, you have to do your homework. You can't just push your product along, right? You got to understand what your customer's going through, what problem are they going to have, what problem are you anticipating that they will have, and really have that conversation with them in terms of, what, not just what is the problem in sales, what is keeping you up at night, right? Do your homework. And Second thing is don't jump to your sales pitch too early. A lot of my guys, the people that we coach through sales, they one of the earlier symptoms I see is they're pitching. They're selling on every call. They're selling on every outreach. Well, right, put yourself in their shoe. Do you want to be pitched every time? Right? And if the especially worse, if the messaging is the same every time, buy me, buy me. Oh, I have a special. Limited time, buy me. Buy. Well, very if they don't unsubscribe to your email, very soon they'll just block you out and stop reading it. Right? So don't jump to a sales pitch too early. Number three, obviously, is communicate value. I always say that as we work with our client on their outreach sequences, I question them every time. In this communicate out, what's your value? What value are you providing? Why is it better that your client have, reading this email is better off after reading your email? What is your value? Show the value, right? And the value isn't just use me, I'm more efficient. I don't know. How are you going to stand out from the crowd if that's all you're saying, right? Provide value by saying, hey, we talked about hiring best practices. Um, Last time I know you wanted to sort of lay off some people during this time. Hey, I found an article around this topic. Take a read. I think it might be relevant for you, right? Show your value, not just communicate a value. Number four is educate before selling, right? If customer understand what's going on a broad spectrum, then it's better that they talk themselves into buying a product, right? The more they understand, the more they're going to want to work with you. But don't sell. Selling, not don't sell, but don't sell too early, I would say. Number five, be personable. People buy from people they are like or like. That's what we always say. And even in the B2B world, right, people are still buying from another person. And the idea of credibility and credibility and likability go hand in hand, right? If I know that you have the product I want, but I don't like you, I'm going to find someone who has the product and I like, right? Because I want to do business with people that I like, that's easy to work with, that I want to do business again and again with, right? So be personable. And number six, back to value. What value are you adding to every conversation, right? Like I said, not just communicate the value, but adding value to every transaction. So far, so good? Excellent. And another question I always get is, well, how often, especially during COVID time, do they have time? I want to be, respectful of their time with their family. How often do I reach out? And this is a very generic customer journey map. But when we talk about from the moment that a client understand a need, that they have a need, all the way to education, to solution, to selection, then to the post-sales upsell process, there's a journey. And in that journey, there are little cues you give them along the way so that they want to buy you, right? And what you need to think about is your customer outreach isn't just your phone call, your text, your email. Is everything else, especially in today's very social world, is everything else that's over and above your emails and your phone calls. Right? How else can you bring your client's journey along, drag them along, the client's journey through your communicate, whether that's what we call the human communication and the non-human communication. So give that some thought because that's very powerful once you plan that correctly. And I'm going to show you an email sequence that I did a while back. Um, and this is the power of automated email. And if you guys are not on an automated, either automated workflow and or email sequence, definitely look into your CRM and see how to get that moving along. Because I'll give you a classic example. In my world, normally, before we have all these awesome automation tool, one rep can manage about, I would say, 40 active leads or prospects in the pipe. Active, right? I'm not talking about just dumping a list in your CRM and they're assigned 200 assigned to you, right? I'm talking about actively working it. 1 to 40 in at least in our industry, because it's fairly high touch point. After we've implemented a lot of these email sequence and workflow um, techniques or technology, now we can do 1 to 100. So there's definitely an efficiency to be had. And I'll give you a sample email sequence here. So the best practice dictate that, if someone's an active prospect going through your buying journey, in various different stages, there are sort of a nurturing and or an email sequence that need to go up. And a lot of times when people say, okay, an inbound need come in and or we went on discovery call and I emailed them. I followed up already. Okay. In today's world, with so much email, so much information bombarded at your buyer, you can't just rely on one follow-up email and call it a day. That's just no longer you can't expect that one email to do to do a lot, right? So best practice is that you have to have 7 to 12 touch points. So let me show you a little bit of how that's done in an automated fashion online. So my first automated email here was, I think someone went to one of our webinar that we did with City of Hamilton, and nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us. Email automated. So we have that all set up. The touch points all set up. All I have to do is once the webinar was done, I enroll these people into this particular sequence. And in 2 days, on my CRM, there is a to-do item on my list to say to call these people. Okay. And in 8 days, it will prompt me to say, hey, Agnes, send a personal email out to these people that went to your Hamilton webinar. Then 5 days after that, I've already planted that, there's an interesting article about prospecting. So Pierre and I, which is one of the speakers, which is a BDC chief economist, Pierre and I had dinner in 2019 to talk about economy, so that goes automatically. And then 4 days from that, another one, host a panel on sales automation, interested? So I know they like webinar because they went to our first webinar. So now I'm asking them if they want to go to another webinar. So after that, I'm saying, hey, Elon Musk has a robot. Why not you? So we talked a lot about, 1 to 40 rep active ratio, 100. I can increase that by 100% from an efficiency standpoint. Don't believe me? Let me show you. And then what we call this a breakup email, right? Email is your email buried, and then that's my breakup email. And a lot of times, people don't like breakup emails, but when you write your breakup email a certain way, it actually prompts some action, because genuinely in today's world, people are just busy. They want to talk to you, but they're like, oh, yeah, I'll just wait another couple days. I'll just wait another couple days. But by the time they get a breakup email, they're like, oh, shoot, I really need to talk to Agnes. I want to talk to her about sales automation. And just prompt, hey, Agnes, there's actually a booking link in the bottom of the email. So they'll just book and just find a time, right? So, the email sequence and or automation, these robots are designed to help us. So if you haven't been using it, definitely leverage it. It is, I wouldn't go a day without my automation tool right now. And I always make a parallel. None of us really use our hands to wash clothes anymore, aside from the delicates. But none of us really use that. Why are we cutting and pasting emails? You don't have to anymore. So definitely look into that. No face-to-face, no problem. So where are we communicating nowadays with our customer? And McKinsey did a research on this as well. You can see that the B2B sellers shouldn't have moved obviously to remote and digital. Partially because people are working from home more now. So even if you want to go into the office, they're not in the office anymore. So you're seeing less and less in-person transaction, more and more remote transaction, right? And remember I told you earlier on in the deck about how some of our customers are doing e-commerce even though they're not in the e-commerce business before, right? You know, we're buying sales training online or buying some of the tools online, which normally they wouldn't. But there is some sort of a digital self-serve component in the buying process now, and be investing in that channel. And also in terms of this 70 and 80% of the people that actually buy that channel, what they're saying is, what, it's not that I don't want to talk to salespeople, but if I don't need to, right, things like if we can do digital self-serve, all the better, right? Because I don't want, there's an ease of schedule if we're doing remote work. I save on travel expense. And most importantly, right, people are still saying, hey, there's still a safety concern here. I want to make sure that everyone's like post-pandemic, we'll do this, right? So, but I can tell you, I'm planning some expansion opportunity with some of our clients, and we're definitely looking at trade shows in the States comes the fall, right? And trade shows are now going to start back up again. So you can see we're going to settle between a old world and new world. I mean, pandemic world, and come up with a new world of how that remote selling and a happy blend of traveling versus remote selling. Definitely during COVID time, and as you would expect, traditional or in-person sales went down 52%. And people are relying on the digital more heavily, whether that is video conferencing, in the world of Zoom, or online chat, which is also becoming very popular. Uh, prefer over the phone in all cases. So I can tell you, a lot of times clients are asking, well, which is a preferred video platform? Because nowadays everyone seems to have multiple video platform between the Googles of the world, the Zooms of the world, the Teams of the world. And there you have it. In terms of a preference, people are saying, the top three preference is going to be your Zoom, your WebEx, and your Teams for different reasons. And that's to help the customers, to talk to others in the company, meet with prospect, but those are your standard platform that people are using. And I don't want to stress, I can't stress the importance of actual video conferencing. And, I know it doesn't replace face-to-face, but it's better than a phone call. So this research shows that, 127% more likely to close a deal when the video is in, like this video, all right? The body language, your facial expression, the active listening, all that matters in a deal negotiation and or sales conversation. And it allows you to understand what's happening in terms of their engagement level. So definitely, if you can prompt you first of all have to use video, but if you can prompt your clients to use video as well, it goes a long way in your sales journey. And of course, we're not we're not there about being perfect. We're about being human. How I don't think there's a meeting that goes by since last March where people are saying that I don't hear the words "you're on mute." You're on mute, right? So it's not about being perfect, right? It is about empathy. It is about saying, hey, you know what? I'm in on this too. Now, going back to the journey, when we talked about, oh, is it that one follow-up call? Is it that two follow-up call? Right? It isn't. If you look at the way that you lay out the information engagement plan, right? That can be ads. It could be me being on a webinar. It could be website information. It could be appearing on community forum. It could be commenting on their LinkedIn posts, right? It could be a whole slew of things in terms of touch point that have nothing to do with actual selling. But don't forget, selling a lot of times is being in the right place at the right time. So planting these engagement point along a customer buying journey is very important part of sales. And I get often asked a lot whether it is a sales responsibility or marketing responsibility. And I would like to say, if you are able to come up with a plan jointly with your marketer, all the better. Um, because I agree from a cadence perspective, if we have some marketing support, honestly, it would go such a long way. Just some final tips before we get to some questions in terms of the how, there really is nothing to it. Be transparent, right? No one wants you to fake your way through sales, and especially not in a long-term partnership situation. So be transparent, be empathetic, be about your customer, right? It should be all about your customer. It shouldn't be about what product you have to push. It's about how your product can help your customer solve their problem. Be you, and of last but not least, be there, especially during this time. And that's all I have for you today from a content perspective. Love to hear what you guys, any question you guys might have. Let's see, how do I get this? There we go. Let's see, anyone have any question for me in the, you can type it in chat so I can help you guys have it. Maybe we can share an open forum discussion. Awesome. Any questions?
Hi, Agnes.
Oh,
Thank you so much for that. You went through a lot of information very quickly. It was awesome.
I try not to keep the group on. I know you guys have back-to-back speakers, but I do want to leave some time for Q&A. So I don't know if we do have time for Q&A
Yeah, the
today.
next speakers start in a few minutes. So maybe I'll just announce who those are. And I want to thank you very much for your time. And then you could do, if anyone wants to stick around and do questions, they can definitely do that with you. So first I want to say thank you. I know, doing all the content and stuff, it takes a long time to prepare. So we really, really appreciate your time. You went through some amazing, so you're very optimistic about live events also.
I am. Well, especially in the States, right? Because some of our clients are expanding into the States, and at least in the States, for what we can see, they're being offered. It seems like business as usual. And I always tell my client, make sure you're vaccinated, make sure you keep yourself safe. But it is looking like the market is opening. So I'm very optimistic there.
I miss that. I miss the rush of, we used to coordinate live events, and I really miss that. So I hope you're right. And I just want to mention, I know I see somewhat people are having some questions here. So I'm just going to let everyone know in the next couple of minutes, we have our next two sessions. So we have the only sales conversation you will ever need. And the second topic is the power of going one-to-one with your salespeople. So those are our next two sessions starting at 2:50. I'll leave you to the questions if that's okay, Agnes.
No problem.
I have a few coming in here. So thanks so much again for being here. And I will hope to see you soon on the platform.
For sure. So I think lots of questions is all around sales automation. So in terms of what tool you use, there's actually quite a few. So I would investigate first into the CRM you're using. So depending on which CRM you're using, you'll get some automation. And in general, you get three types of automations. Number one, you get workflow automations. Workflow automation, I'll give you a classic example, would be, let's say, you drag one of your opportunities or one of your deals over to proposal, let's say, the proposal stage. And your proposal stage, by just doing that action, your proposal, that action will generate, let's say, a notification for someone else. So let's say your operations team or your project management team. So they'll get a notification saying, hey, this project is expected to close at this time at this dollar amount. Get prepared for it. They know it's in proposal. They know it's not going. It doesn't mean they have to act on it. They know it doesn't mean that they have to, that it's actually even a close. But it's sort of ping them, allowing them to see what's coming down the pipeline. So workflow is pretty useful that way. And there's some sales workflow too. Like for example, if you dial out from your CRM and automatically that tracks it as someone you contacted. So instead of let's say, in new status of a contact or a lead, it would say in progress status. So there's a few workflow there that allows you to not have to do the click yourself. The second type of automation is the integration automation. So depending on which CRM you have, it would integrate with, generally there's a plugin, right? There's a plugin and it would do the different things you want it to do. So for example, if you use, let's say Vidyard. So let's say you did a plugin with your CRM with Vidyard, then if you send out your email directly from your CRM, the plugin, like no longer are you doing like a video cut and like video link of a Vidyard cutting and paste in the middle of the email. It just doesn't look good, right? When you send it out to your clients. So the plugin will allow them to see your face, right, with the play triangle, and allow them to play right on the email, and then the email then is tracked in terms of when it's open. So those integration is kind of useful, like PandaDoc integration is kind of useful, and or DocuSign, obviously. Integration is useful, and then all the signed document now flows back to your CRM. So you're not like dragging it from like a team document to from email to team to project teams, and you're not dragging all these documents anywhere. There's a central source of document storage within your right in your CRM itself. So integration I would definitely use, and it's very useful. Sometimes it tracks also, depending on which integration. There are integration apps that allows people that have previously contacted you to you know actually how they have navigated your website. So let's say they have went to your website and they have hung out on the pricing page for a while. So you know, based on that feedback back to your CRM, that that lead is pretty hot, right? They've been on your pricing page for a little bit. They know what's going on. So there is that ping back to you to say this is a hot lead, so you know to do something about it next. Last but not least, the one that you guys are talking about, which is the one I showed you guys today, is the email sequencing the tool. So in your CRM, it would have a functionality that it literally generally says email sequence, because that's the industry term there. So email sequence, it allows you to set as many sequence as you want, in terms of or touch point as you want in your CRM, and then you enroll them into that sequence. And then it's like a set it and forget it tool. So you enroll them in the top, and then when they actually come back, like your CRM will be able to detect that an email, like they send a reply. And then when they send the reply, then that sequence actually stops, because it knows, it's smart enough to know that this person reply, I no longer need to send the rest of the chain of emails. So when they reply, obviously right? So it's pretty smart that way. Christian, I saw your email about, can you share any email sequence for LinkedIn Sales Navigator? That's a longer discussion, so why don't you ping me on LinkedIn and we'll talk about that. But my concern, not my concern, like I mentioned in the deck earlier, if you look at the customer buying journey, it's nice to understand, because email sequence isn't a point in time. There is different ways to connect with your client at different point in time of their buying journey. So what you have to really do is, as you design the flow of the email, or that particular email, you got to understand the pain point of what they're going through at the time. What is their motivation of doing research at that time? And then you look at what content and the platform you want to serve that information on, that you try to address the concern that they have. So when you draft out email sequence takes longer to draft than you imagine. So, because then don't forget, once you draft it, now you're using that sequence for the next 100, 200 leads, right? So it's worth spending the time. If you look at my sequence I share with you in the deck, they don't sound robotic. And that's one thing I always coach our client is like, you can't make it sound robotic. If it sounds robotic, like last time you got an email that sounds robotic, how often would you read to the end? You wouldn't, even if you start reading the first two lines, right? So really, as you lay out your email sequence, make sure that it sounds like you, right? But make sure that you actually add those value points in there as well in every conversation. And also, one thing that I would suggest also, Christian, as you lay out the email sequence, it's also um, the value that you provide. And I always challenge my client every time you send out this automated email. Number one, leverage social, like different type of media, right? Sometimes I get the founders to do a 15-minute clip so that there's some sort of um, a social media, a sort of multimedia component to it. Sometimes I get them to do a GIF. Sometimes I get them to do Vidyard, right? So it doesn't look like just text, right? So there's different way to engage a client in terms of designing these email sequence to drive a response. Ultimately, that's your end goal, right? So, what I'm concerned about in terms of Christian, what you're saying in terms of the LinkedIn Sales Navigator in particular is Sales Navigator doesn't have an email, like if you're talking about automation, it doesn't have that email automation function. So you still, from a LinkedIn Sales Navigator perspective, now you get the information on the lead, but you don't get the efficiency. So when you go back to what I mentioned earlier in terms of your ratio of a rep to a lead ratio, you're not gaining the efficiency if you're not doing it through a CRM. Because then you're still cutting and pasting. Even if you have designed your email sequence, you're still cutting and pasting every 4 days. And then if you forget to do one, and then when do you pick up the next time? So that's why the automation tool, depending on which CRM you have, is so important because as a rep, I don't want to think about how I'm going to hunt my account every day. I want to know that there is a sequence I'm following. I just need to follow it and I'll close at the closing ratio that I normally close at, right? The idea of scalability and predictability in my pipeline. So, and all that, not everything can be automated. I don't want to say that we want to, a machine can take over our job, but I'm saying that there are tools in place right now that allows you to do that. But anyways, I know you guys have to go. I'm going to get in trouble for keeping you guys here this long. Ping me on LinkedIn, guys. I see quite a number of you quite engaged here. Just message me on LinkedIn, and then I will definitely get back to you and have an offline conversation. How's that? Thank you so much for joining me, guys.